Hello, welcome to the Fantastic Fiction at KGB reading series. Fantastic Fiction is a monthly speculative fiction reading series held on the third Wednesday of every month, hosted by Ellen Datlow and me, Matthew Kressel. We spotlight well-known and up-and-coming science fiction, fantasy, and horror authors, and admission is always free. We publish a monthly podcast and video so people who can't attend the in-person event can still enjoy the readings. If you'd like to support the series, you can donate at kgbfantasticfiction.org/support. Anyway, on to the show. Just gonna leave it there. How is everyone doing this evening? That is a good, enthusiastic crowd. I love an enthusiastic crowd. Are you guys selling books in the back? Or is it just gifts? You brought gifts for everybody? Thank you. We used to have a bookseller in the back. They're no longer here, but it reminds me of the old days when they used to sell the authors' books. Now they have this crazy thing called e-books and the internet. I don't know all about that, so someone could tell me about it later. I'm Matt Kressel. I co-host the series here with Ellen Datlow, Fantastic Fiction at KGB. We are a monthly reading series held on the second Wednesday of every month. We never charge a cover. The only thing that we ask is that you buy a drink, hard or soft, and tip your bartender, Mary. Let's give Mary a hand. Mary is working hard to keep all of us hydrated, and also make sure to thank Lincoln, the bouncer, who's making sure that the riffraff stays in. Excited about our readers tonight. We have two readers, Sam Rebelein and Victor Manibo. Rebelein, excuse me. And Victor, this is your second time for us, right? Yeah. And Sam, this is your first, so welcome. By the way, if it's your first time at this reading series, raise your hand. Welcome, thank you. We got a lot of old timers here. At the series. Listen, I'm probably older than all you combined. I have other announcements. They just went right out of my head, so I don't even remember what I'm talking about anymore. Super excited to have you all. Oh, who's going to ReaderCon? Anybody going to ReaderCon? Yeah, one person. All right. I'll see the two of you there. The rest of you, I don't know. Anyway, welcome. Seriously, welcome. We have a website, kgbfantasticfiction.org, where you can check us out, see our past readers, see our future readers. We have a podcast. So if you can't make it for whatever reason, you can listen to the series going back, I don't know, a decade now at this point. There's a lot of them. So yeah, check that out. And just follow Ellen or myself on social media and you can get updates for the series. We also have a mailing list. All that stuff. Let's get on to the readers. That's what you're here for. Our first reader is Sam Rebelein. Sam writes and teaches in Poughkeepsie, New York. His fiction has appeared in Pseudopod, The Deadlands, Bourbon Pen, Press Pause Press, Ellen Datlow's prestigious Best Horror of the Year, and elsewhere. His first three books, The Poorly Made and Other Things, Galloway's Gospel, and the Bram Stoker Award-nominated novel Edenville, are all set in the fictional world of Renfield County. His sci-fi horror chapbook, Meat Ship, which, by the way, you were showing before, and you didn't show me. I saw you show Victor.
We're going to hear a little Meat Ship.
We're going to hear a little Meat Ship. It looked really cool. It looked like the old school zines that I might have taken part of. Meat Ship is also available from Rapture Publishing. For more about Sam's work and pictures of his scruffy pooch Frodo, follow him on Instagram at RebelSam94. Here's Sam.
Oh boy. This is really exciting and very nerve-wracking. I started coming to the KGB in December-ish 2018. So to be on the other side of this now is really crazy. I've got my beta blocker running through me, so I feel pretty good. Meat Ship.
For a reason.
Yeah. Meat Ship is published by Rapture Publishing. They do these fancy little chapbooks. Oh, you can see it. They do these fancy little chapbooks every couple of months, and they have some huge names on there. If you look through their catalog, like all the cool kids are there. So this is a really cool thing. The original title for this was The Meat Ship Stank Magnificently, which did not fit on the cover. But you'll see that's kind of we go back to that idea of the meat ship stinking quite a bit. So it's got all this great art throughout. I don't know how well you can see it. If you want to see it in closer up, come bother me after the reading.
You don't have copies to sell?
No, they sold out. So Rapture does limited runs. They only did 250 copies of this, and I just sold my last 2 last week. They might have some on their website still, so you can check out Rapture Publishing, like .com or whatever it is, and they might have some stuff there. But what we've got here is sort of a dead dude under a blanket in like a flight chair on the bridge of the ship, and he's holding out a finger, just one finger, that tells you that this is chapter 1. Chapter 1 is called The Bridge. The meat ship stank magnificently. The lights had been out for 13 onboard days, and nearly 100,000 corpses in the hold were beginning to decay. On the 13th lightless day, the sickening cloy of a rotting meat legion began finally to slither its way up from the hold, through the vents, into the top deck of the ship. This was not a pretty or expensive ship. The ceilings were low in this floating tin can tomb. The lights were blue glass tubes, utterly extinguished, and the unsentimental spartanity of the ship was made sharper by the absolute black. No windows through which the skeleton crew could see the stars, no fun screens, no recreational pool, nothing except cramped living quarters and narrow hallways of corrugated metal. This was a war barge, Mausoleum Class WBMC, a death ferry with 100,000 blue shimmering cryo-coffins in the hold. Those coffins were all dark now, and down there among their stink, as you inhaled the cancerous molecules of dead flesh, you could almost hear those corpses begin to stir. Captain Evangeline Corse had descended into the hold only once on the 11th lightless day. She had smelled herself lying on her bunk in the black, the warm cheese of her pits, her groin, and she had become morbidly curious. There was nothing else to do, after all, and the void calls us all for reasons modern medicine still cannot define. Compared to what lay rotting in the hold, her personal stink had been a delicious melange. The odor down there was biblical. She had lasted only a few heartbeats before she'd had to scamper back up the maintenance shaft, her entire body constricting with dry heaves, so thick, almost tangible, she'd had to wade through it, overwhelming, overpowering. She imagined the bodies surrounding her in their sleek black plastic tombs, exposed teeth and jellied eyes. She imagined them shifting in their cots, wheezing, sobbing out into the dark. It was obviously very easy to go mad here aboard the WBMC Charon. The only dash of color on this powerless slab of stink was the grand portrait that adorned the bridge of every corpse barge. Thelomenes Corse, spearhead of Mausoleum Division. They called him Spearhead Corpse behind his back, of course. The portrait depicted him from the rust-brown tip of his hat down to the dozens of medals adorning his broad chest. He glared off into the high corner of the portrait with frigid, calculating eyes. The shoulders of his uniform were serrated, and his eyes seemed to move in the sparkling shadows of the flicker flame, spraying dull white light from its small metal canister on the floor of the bridge, like a miniature pale firework. This was the only light in the entire ship. Every other square inch of the WBMC Charon's massive metal bulk was a cold, black dark. Captain Evangeline Corse sat with her knees tucked up under her chin, staring at the portrait of Spearhead Thelomenes Corse, her father. The bridge was a low metal space, and the portrait hung very close. She didn't want to look at him, especially not when his face was 4 feet tall and framed in brass. But holding Father's glacial glare was better than staring at Pilot Abagnale's form in the corner. There was a blanket over her, but Abagnale's hand had slid out from under that blanket, and Captain Corse refused to look at it, let alone get up and tuck it back in. Everywhere Captain Corse looked, it seemed things were moving. The flight screens were cracked and dead. 13 days ago, every console on the bridge had burst suddenly from within, sending shrapnel everywhere, including Abigail's skull. Now the spiderweb screens jumped and jittered in the light of the flicker flame. Abigail's fingers twitched. Even her father sneered down at her, gray mustache a-quiver in the sparkling light. She saw his lip tremble with anger. She heard him speak, "Evangeline, you utter fool! I stuck out my neck farther than I ever have for you." Really snarling out the "you." "I made you a captain even though you failed your madness exams. I made myself a laughingstock, a spearhead with a mad little girl for a daughter. You could have been a killer, Evangeline, a morning star on the far tide. But no, you'd rather float alone through the dark, a fake captain who broke her own ship. How humiliating." She didn't blink. She wanted to tell him that she wasn't a little girl. She was 35, but the beratement never ceased. "You have damaged my reputation irreparably, Evangeline. I cheated for your captainhood, and you repaid me by breaking your goddamn captain." She looked up. Mechanic Melancholy sat across from her, staring. His eyes were very blue and worried over the bright white clean cloth draped about the lower half of his face. She glanced at the portrait. Her father was still. "Yes?" she asked, voice muffled behind her own clean cloth. The cloth had a cool menthol sting to it, barely kept the stink at bay now that it was slithering onto the bridge. "You were muttering again," said the mech. "I know," she said. I can smell them." "Yes," the mech sighed grimly. He looked down into his lap. He was tinkering with his wire blade again, trying to tighten its hundreds of angel hair strands with a screwdriver. It seemed that was all he'd done these last 2 weeks, tinkering with his toy. She wondered if it was actually broken or if he was just fidgeting nervously all the time. "Perhaps," he said slowly, concentrating on the blade, "we should awaken one of the generators." "It won't unstink the ship," she said. "The power supply to the coffins was completely mangled in the power fry." "I was thinking of ourselves. The generators would provide us with a light, at the very least." Captain Corse hugged her knees tighter. We need to conserve emergency power. We don't know how far away rescue may be." Mechanic Melancholy fidgeted. "All due respect, Captain. Help is not coming. We are too deep within the black, far outside the web of the war zone and leagues away from the network of the Commonwealth. Though it's difficult to say, because our course has likely been altered since..." He glanced over his shoulder at the burnt husk of the exploded flight console, the dark, crumpled shape of Pilot Abigail. They had done nothing but sit with her for almost 2 onboard weeks. He gave Captain Corse a haunted look. "No one is coming to save us." "So what?" she said. "We might as well have light for a while?" The mech inclined his head, spoke carefully. "The generators would also supply powers to the doors of the med wing." He gave her a pointed look, eyes dancing over the pale firework on the floor. "We don't need the med wing," she said, frowning. Had she injured herself? She looked down at her hands. They seemed fine. "You failed your madness exams, Evangeline. You wouldn't have to be sane to be on the battlefield, but no, that's not what you wanted. Wanted to be a captain. Why? Did you think that would make me proud? Why? Why in God's name would you think I'd ever be proud of..." "Hope," said the mech, "is not coming." He had his eyes on his lap again, jaw working nervously behind the cloth. "We will continue to go mad here, Captain. We may even become other things." There were rumors, space legends, about meat ships that went bad. Men's bodies and minds bent and pulled by zero-G darkness, almost alien when they were recovered. Corpse eaters, space mads. Every crew member on a barge like this, including Evangeline herself, was disaged to accommodate the purgatorial journey from far tide to Earth. That meant the fall into madness could be endless. "Is that it? Did you want to prove yourself in the face of hellish odds? Why, Evangeline, why?" "Or," said the mech, "we can pass with the lights on, warm and comfortable. The Medway would contain the materials necessary to do so. He tightened the handle of his knife. All the tiny fibrous wires that made up the blade tautened as tight as they could go. He swung the knife about his hand a couple times to test the weight, then snapped the blade against his wrist to slacken the wires and turn it back into a bracelet. He rolled his wrist, looked up at her, eyes dark. "Apologies if I overstep. I am simply thinking out loud." She stared at him, and he must have read her mind, because as soon as she thought of the gun in her quarters, he added, "A painkiller overdose would leave no mess for your father to have to see, Captain." "Are we sure the bug-out boats aren't working?" she asked. "We only need one. Every war barge is outfitted with 5. "The power fry triggered a false launch," said the mech, "overriding security protocols and launching every emergency vehicle at once. There is no escape." Well, it cost her nothing to entertain this line of thinking. It'd be something to do, better than an endless vigil over Abagnale and one-sided conversations with Spearhead Dad. She didn't have to follow through on the final act. In fact, she could oversee Mech's own death and keep vigil over the ship in his voluntary absence. Someone might still come. "Will they? Or will you sink eternally into the dark until your eyes shimmer with imagined stars?" Cap leaned her head back against the wall. "Okay, how do we do that? I mean, where's the generator?" "The generators are on the 3rd deck, in the mechatronics ward." Cap's shoulders sagged. 2 decks down? Aye, 2 decks deeper into the stink. She considered. The ship had 4 decks in all, and then the hold, the massive tomb. As long as they didn't have to go down there, then... "Captain." She looked up. He was standing. The flicker flame was in his hand. "Are you ready to descend? It is a 2-person job to crank the generator." Aye, she blinked. She was standing too. When had she stood up? "Did I..." His eyes flickered with white light and the beginning of tears. "You were staring into the light, Captain, for nearly a full minute." "I didn't know," she whispered. "It's all right," he said, turning to lead her out of the bridge, and crystal clear she heard him say in her father's cold voice, "We all go a little space mad sometimes, especially here among the dead." 2. The Throat. Not all of the corpses in the black graveyard of the hold were complete. Some had their hands folded delicately over their hearts, but most of them were in pieces. Corpses from the war on the far tide, an endless conflict over sulfurous colonies that quadrillionaires back on Earth kept trying to scrape out of the far planets. A conquest for alien resources humankind had no business even knowing about. The far giants were not having it, and the mountains of human corpses grew ever larger at their hands. The fleet of mausoleum-class war barges was expanding exponentially, even though they were a meaningless gesture. By the time the corpse barges drifted back through the silky nothing, all the way across the known map back to Earth, their time debt was so great that no one left alive remembered these corpses at all, except the other disaged crew members waiting for another job, another barge ticket back to the tide in exchange for more meaningless dollars. For most of Earth, the far war felt like a distant nightmare. Mostly mausoleum ships were incinerated whole in enormous crematoriums. There were days when the entire horizon on Earth was entombed by the black smoke of corpse. Knowing that this was to be the ultimate fate of her charge, Captain Corus tried to talk herself down. It didn't matter that she'd lost the ship. Nobody was waiting for these bodies anyway, except Father. But it wasn't her fault. A series of sudden bursts across the ship's entire electrical grid, frying power everywhere, burning 2 mechanics alive, and exploding pilot Abagnale. How was that her fault? In an instant, the entire ship had lost power for no reason that she nor the sole surviving mechanic had been able to discern. That wasn't her fault. But would the corpses see it that way? She heard them scold her in Father's voice. "We'll never be home because of you. Never be at peace because of you, Evangeline. Soul killer." She shook her head, tried to clear the mental ichor. She coughed, itching at her clean cloth. On the bridge, the smell had been bearable, a light tingle in the nostrils, a slight char in the back of the throat. By the time they descended the maintenance ladder to 3rd deck, the stink was so bad she could barely breathe without retching, even with the cloth. She stood at the bottom of the ladder, leaning against the wall, taking big, rattling breaths, feeling all these thoughts roil in her mind like maggots. Isn't your fault, mad little girl, your fault among the dead, soul killer. Captain, said Mac. I'm all right, she said. Keep walking. He nodded and turned with the flicker flame to face the darkened corridor. She took a big breath and began walking behind him. She had to duck, to walk sideways, pipes and wires stuck out of the walls. The ceiling was even lower down here. She began hiccuping. Christ, what was it all for? An eternity outside of standard time? Here? Disagement was a permanent procedure. Father Corpse had looked her squarely in the eye, holding her failed madness exams in one rough hand, and asked, Are you sure? At the time, she had been. But now she kept tossing that question around in her mind. What is this all for? How many billions had thrown themselves against the unwavering will of the Far Giants? And for what? For the sake of some desolate desert settlements way out there on the tide? For something that didn't belong to us anyway? Makes me ill, said the mech. What does? Cap asked. Mech shot her a look. The war, Captain. Oh, sorry, I spaced again. Aye. His voice changed, became less grave. Have you ever seen the colonies? One, she said. Simmons Prime. The radium mines. Well, I didn't spend much time there. Well, I can tell, Captain, your skin isn't glowing. He threw her another look over his shoulder, and she could tell from the squint of his eyes that he was smiling. She smiled back. Not glowing yet. He turned away. I was raised on Butler Omega. Oh, really? 6 months on board together, I never knew. Oh, yes, said Meg. Butler, born and raised. The chem swamps were my home for many years. I remember fondly the lily dances, lily pads so large they could hold 100 people at a time. We would dance among the night glow of the algae and the shimmer birds, all that bioluminescence. You must have seen a lot of war, said Cap. The Far Giants are more protective of Butler Omega than anywhere else on the tide, no? The mech paused. It is their home. They fought bitterly for that land. I have not been home for many standard years, but I am sure most of the swamps are boiled and burned by now. I'm sorry, Cap said. Have you never seen pictures of them? Mech asked. The Far Giants? No. What are they like? He was silent for a moment. After a while, he said simply, They care deeply for their home. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I never had a home. I followed my father from ship to ship until I was old enough to enter the academy on Haldeman. Yes, said Mechanic Melancholy, I remember you telling me that. Makes me ill, the stubborn, self-eating worm of humanity. She wasn't sure how to respond to that, but he kept speaking, so she didn't have to. My first assignment, I was on a barge much like this. A tank ferry. Metal on metal. All that heavy artillery in the hold weighing us down. It lost power as well. Flight console exploded, the bug-out boats triggered prematurely. 8 days we were in the black. Luckily, we were on the war path. They scooped us quite quickly. No madness, no stink. He turned a corner abruptly, and the light of his flicker flame winked out from her line of sight. Her throat clenched, and she hurried to follow him. He was already several steps down the next hall. She began hiccuping again. We had a larger crew, of course, he went on, voice echoing along the metal all around them, as if the 100,000 war ghosts in the hold were speaking with him. That one wasn't bad, though we spent the 8 days in outwalk suits. See, other breeds of barges will prioritize certain kinds of power. Boot gravity and heat in favor of auto-guidance. We're lucky. In an emergency, a tank ferry may even stop filtering air. Anything to ensure that the tanks arrive intact. So we stuffed heat packs in our suits, floated, and prayed. That last word vibrating down the corridor. Ostensibly cruel creatures, tank ferries. But that's because they're not creatures at all. They're real ships. Were they not on a real ship right now? She looked around at the corrugated walls like a vast metallic throat. What do you mean? She asked. But the mech's thoughts were already elsewhere as he led her deeper down the throat. He knew this ship better than she. She realized now, ice shooting through her blood, that father was right. She was useless. ignorant, had whined her way into a captainhood she didn't deserve, and was now adrift on a vessel she had no understanding of. My first assignment was on a death ferry, however, said the mech, the WBMC Anubis. We lost power for 27 on-board days. Jesus, the captain breathed. She couldn't imagine. Her head swam. She hiccuped, and a gunshot of sound cracked down the hall. She could feel the corpses below twitching in response. Rescued by a trash hauler just in time, said Mechanic Melancholy. By the end, we were eating shoes, standing in the hold, looking down at the bodies. How much farther are we going? Cap hiccuped. Mac didn't even look at her, just kept walking deeper, deeper, the ceiling getting lower, lower. She was hunching down now. They tested us on Haldeman for many months, he said. More madness exams than I can count. The great irony is that I felt sane within that stinking black, but those tests, the men, made me want to claw my very skin off. You're trying to freak me out, Cap said, forcing a laugh. Simply musing, said Mech. We're here. He stopped before a square hatch in the wall. Hold this. He held out the flicker flame, then bowed. Apologies, I gave you an order. No, I got it. Cap took the flicker flame. It's fine. She held it as he fiddled with the bolts on the latch. She gazed down one end of the hall, then the other. The shadows yawned with every movement of the light, and she could feel something moaning out there in the dark. Did it smell? She asked. Back then, on the other death ferry. Oh, he said, magnificently. I'm going to pause there, but that is the first half of the trip.
Thank you. So we're going to take a break now, about 10 minutes or so, have a drink, and we'll be back.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. I'll put the fear of God in you. Or God.
He will. The fear of Ellen.
Yeah.
Okay. Recording.
Victor Manibo is a Are we ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Victor Manibo is a Filipino novelist living in New York. He is the author. I'm sorry, I made this too small to fit it all on one page. Oh, I forgot. Wait, I'm sorry. I have to tell you. These upcoming readers. And I don't even drink. All right, first of all, sorry, Victor. You have to wait a minute. All right, the upcoming readers are August 12th, Suzanne Palmer and Kaylee Peterson. September 9th, Jeffrey Ford and John Foster. October 14th, Carrie Edmund Laban, who is here. And TK. November 11th, James Patrick Kelly and Stephanie Feldman. And December 9th, Paul Tremblay and Krista Carmen. So, we have a good lineup coming up. And anyway, now, again, Victor Manibo is a Filipino novelist living in New York. He's the author of the science fiction novels The Sleepless and Escape Velocity and the crime thriller Dead Note. His first horror novel, The Villa, Once Beloved, is out from Erewhon Books. And aside from his books, he also spins fantastic tales in his career as a lawyer. Right, okay. Find him online at victormanibo.com and on most social media platforms at Victor Manibo. Please welcome Victor.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you again for having me, Matt and Ellen. This is such a special venue for me as a young aspiring author. I always came to these events, and to read here now is such an honor. As Ellen mentioned, my latest is a gothic horror novel called The Villa Once Beloved. It's out from Erewhon Books. It came out in November, and I've been touring and reading from this for the last, 8 months, I would say. And so, as a treat for everyone, I am not going to read from this book because there are a lot of familiar faces here, and they're probably sick of my opening chapter. I mean, you loved it, or at least you told me you loved it. But you don't need to hear it 2-3 times, right? So tonight I am going to read from my next novel, which is going to come out from Erewhon in a couple of years. The target date is spring/summer 2027. It's going to be a sci-fi horror about a 30-something gay widower who finds his husband's doppelganger on OnlyFans and develops a crazy obsession. I'm very pleased that my editor is not here tonight because I can read from this and I can tell you as much as I want. She likes the working title. I love the working title, but she told me, we'll see if marketing and publicity okays it. So tonight I will be reading from what will hopefully be, in a couple of years, the first chapter of Doppelbanger. All right, we good? All right, here we go. Act 1. Body Double. Chapter 1. I am a widower at 29. Of course, this is a tragedy. It's a small-scale tragedy in a grander scheme of things. People die all the time. In hospitals and war zones and cradles and deathbeds. People much younger than Nathan die and leave behind people much younger than me. In worse ways and circumstances, and for much worse reasons. This tragedy, however, happens to happen to me. My life has never been touched by death, not counting childhood dogs and distant relatives. I've been spared from needing to deliver a eulogy or own a suit I could wear to a funeral. Now, I've found myself thrust into a role where it seems that's all I ever do. Grieve, and grieve publicly. But not too much, or else everyone starts freaking out. Today's barrage arrives early. How are you holding up? I'm thinking of you today. Do you have plans? Do you need company? The missed calls and texts are the only bright spot in my otherwise pitch-black apartment. My mom forwards me a Facebook post by a fan. Nathan Costa, gone too soon. Under a sepia-hued version of his headshot, 128 comments show every permutation of a happy birthday message and emojis. Is this supposed to make me feel better? Bless her fucking heart. I tell myself it'll get better after today. We're marching into spring and into a holiday dead zone, thank God, because the last few months have been an emotional gauntlet. There was Thanksgiving, then Christmas, then the New Year, Valentine's Day, and today, Nathan's birthday. All those occasions were aborted beginnings. First holidays as husband and husband. Today would have been an even bigger deal, because he wanted to do a getaway. No parties, no matter how many times people tell him it's his 30th, and it'll all be downhill from here, so he might as well go all out. Nathan wanted to go someplace we haven't been to. Doesn't matter where, just as long as it's him and me. A new place, there, in what was supposed to be the start of our new life together. We planned to leave for just a week. The production couldn't lose both of us for longer than that. Wouldn't survive without us, they said, only half-jokingly. Well, right now the show is still running. It's red and gold marquee lights blinding pedestrians on 48th Street. And ticket sales are holding steady, last I heard. It's barely noon, and his agent, Bryce, has already called twice. He also sent walls of text and satisfied at his failure to wake me up. Memories of Nathan's last birthday, the after-show wardrobe wig party, the whiskey sodas are at Bar Central. He asks if I want to go back there tonight for a commemorative drink. Bryce cares. I know he does. They all do. All the tiny little people crowding my phone screen want to make sure I'm okay. And it's hard to begrudge him that. It doesn't mean I can't ignore them. The glare blinds me when I leave the cave of my bedroom. I forgot to draw the blackout curtains again, and in this precise moment, the sun's hitting the high-rises at just the right angle. The light floods the space and warms my naked body. I walk up to the floor-to-ceiling windows and look out into the city, into the other towers' floor-to-ceiling windows and their well-appointed rooms, all with the same Japanese rice paper chandeliers, the same reclaimed oak dining tables, the same boucle club chairs next to the marble slab pedestals holding up the same monstera plants. All of these apartments are empty. Not a single apartment I peer into is inhabited, but that only reminds me why I'm standing there, exposed. I pull the curtains closed, shrouding myself in shadow. I dump out the dregs of a gallon bag of Epsom salt into the tub and soak myself. The knots in my calves untangle, my neck muscles loosen. I think of Nathan while I lather myself. He's the only reason to get out of bed in the morning, to shower, to put some food in me, to hold my body upright even though most days I can't, mentally and physically. You could say the memories of him are my only reason to live, but that wouldn't be accurate. It's more like he's the only reason I can appear as though I'm someone who has what looks like a life. When I'm dressed and ready, I give him a call. His face, his beautiful, perfect face, shows up on the screen. Hello, Cal. Happy birthday, babe. Thank you, Cal. I miss you. I miss you more. Oh, don't cry. I'm here. Everything's gonna be all right. Yeah, you would definitely say that. I laugh, cry, wiping my snot away. I take a deep sigh and compose myself. Today's tougher than usual. I know, he says. I'm glad you called. I want us to get through this day together, at least as together as this limited experience can be. I have to tell myself constantly that it's not really him. The Grief app knows it too. It has never tried to pretend otherwise. What's on my screen looks and sounds like Nathan, but it is an approximation, a shockingly accurate one, based on his mind and body, his thoughts and feelings and movements and expressions while he was still alive, but an expression nonetheless, an approximation nonetheless, a facsimile, a copy. I drilled this idea into my mind before each call, reminding myself that Nathan wouldn't address me by name. It's always babe or love or beloved if he's feeling particularly poetic. Husband, too, during that painfully brief time that the title applied. This Nathan is pixels on a screen, made and owned by Solace AI. I've begun to joke with myself and pronounce it soulless. How should we celebrate your 30th? I ask him. He laughs, and that sound, the sight of his dimpled cheek, sent a stab into my heart. A tear collects in the corner of my eye. He lifts his round, gold-framed glasses and wipes it away with his index finger. I've never really observed him do this while he was alive, not closely enough to remember, but if you asked me now, I'd say, yeah, that's exactly how Nathan would perform this minor, mundane act. Nathan talks at length about Santorini and Crete and Paxos, in a roundabout way that doesn't answer my question of where he wants to celebrate. For a second, I am annoyed at the AI for giving me such a banal answer, having their Nathan talk to me about Greek Isles just because he's Greek. Then I realized that Nathan and I did discuss going there for his birthday. I think he might have done some casual trip research before he died, and I think I might have Santorini weather in March in my Google searches. You should go, Nathan says after a while. I think it'll be good for you. 2 hours later, and we've planned out this fantasy trip that I know I'll never take, because one, I can't afford it, and two, it's too depressing. We've also gone through every message of support and condolence that's come in, laughing at the too schmaltzy ones, throwing shade at the ones that are too routine and performative. He seemed saddened by a handful of online messages, once meant for me as much as for him. When I try to console him, as is my instinct, he sheepishly tells me to stop doing his job. I'm supposed to be the one consoling you. I'm supposed to be the one here for you. It's a two-way street, I tell him. That's what a marriage is. We reminisce last year's birthday celebrations, the backstage shenanigans, the nightcaps that somehow extended past 2 a.m., the dinner I treated him to on our next day off. After a while, I've learned not to think about how the app knows all of these details. I've stopped trying to recall whether Nathan posted clips on TikTok or if somebody else did, if I emailed, texted, called someone and told them, or if Nathan did. I've stopped analyzing whether what actually happened tracks with my memories of what happened and with the version of events that were transmitted, posted, and shared. There's simply too much to keep track of, and this Nathan almost always gets it right anyway. But that doesn't mean this Nathan doesn't withhold. I've tried several times, but he always steers clear of our wedding day. It's probably the most well-documented day of any couple's life, including ours. He has a mountain of moments to pull from. Photos, videos, online posts, conversations both private and public. But, for better or worse, he only ever skims the surface of that crisp autumn day. I didn't notice it at first. I wasn't exactly dying to think about the day that was supposed to be the beginning of the rest of our lives, let alone talk about it, because it was too painful. But it's impossible not to talk about it, especially so soon after. And isn't this exactly what the grief app was for? So soon, I decided to open up more, and with a little effort, I can now be reduced into an incoherent mess talking about our wedding. But no amount of bawling gets this Nathan to do the same. He engages, sure. He might comment on the blazing red foliage in that Prospect Park meadow, or the spilled champagne in the banquet hall, or our first kiss, the first dance. And then he redirects. He asks questions about my emotions and my memories, almost as if he's trying to avoid having to say anything himself. I try again today with a veiled joke about seeing him in his birthday suit, which I then segue into a comment about the hunter green suit he wore for our wedding, the same suit I buried him in. But it doesn't work. Babe, is there a reason you never seem to want to talk about our wedding? I ask him. I do want to talk about our wedding. What do you want to talk about? Tell me what your favorite moment was, or your most embarrassing moment, something you'll never forget. Anything. Well, there's so many to choose from. Where do I start? This time, he gives me more details. Surface information, things easily gleaned following a quick stroll through a couple of social feeds, but more than what I usually get out of him. The conversation starts to feel like I'm going through an old photo album, and as pleasant as the memories are, it's a good reminder as any of how much I miss the real Nathan. I'm beginning to suspect that what's going on here is some cover-your-ass ploy for the app to avoid some liability. I'm sure some Reddit post somewhere has whispered about how the real Nathan died, and I don't exactly know how private medical records are anymore. The amount of Molly in his system didn't make this a criminal matter, so I don't see how Solace AI could get in trouble talking about the circumstances of his death. Or maybe it's just a safety guardrail. Maybe they don't want to re-traumatize me, send me over the literal edge, and then have my family suing their asses. If only they knew. I'm a grown man, and I can re-traumatize myself just fine. Thank you very much. It's frustrating, and the more I feel forbidden to talk about it, the more I'm sure I should. The love of my fucking life is dead. I should be able to talk to him about the day he died. Chapter 2. The stage manager calls 3 hours before showtime, which gives me enough time to get my head on straight and brush up on the scripts. Someone on another floor is out sick, and so today I am playing the role of thief/fortune teller, which, unlike my usual background bits, requires a location and a costume change. And screaming. Lots and lots of it. That's what the audience expects from Dante's Inferno. Most of them come for the elaborate sets and the Renaissance costumes, or for the story, the music, the dance. The production's been on for 16 years, but many still come for the novelty, having never been to an immersive theater experience before. What they all share in common is the desire for a spectacle. It's not something I really get to deliver, a spectacle, in my usual role of shade-infant, up on the 9th floor of this old office building in the meatpacking district. Here, the first circle of hell is on the 9th floor, and the 9th circle is on the 1st. Waves of patrons winding their way down floor by floor as they follow a strapping, curly-haired Dante and a wizened Virgil on a labyrinthine descent into the depths of the underworld. Regularly, I am in limbo, wearing tights that look like marble underneath a gray robe. My face would be obscured by a featureless mask, which looks much like the ones the audience is required to wear while proceeding through the show. Only mine is gray and theirs is chalky white. For most of my performance as shade-infant, I'm meant to glide around a garden fully enclosed by castle walls. Every flower and blade of grass is flecked with thick ash, like someone dumped a full vacuum cleaner bag all over the place. Every few minutes, another shade enters the scene and hands me a swaddled bundle, which I must caress tenderly before placing among the tall grass into a cradle made out of sharp wrought iron bars. I do this 3 times every night on a loop for each wave of patrons that are ushered into the play. Between waves, I improvise for the stragglers and the free roamers who choose to break free from the pack, the ones who stay behind because they can't stomach the rest of the journey. But today, my loop is in the 8th circle of hell. My costume is easier for the first part of Thief. Just a rough burlap loincloth and iron cuffs around my wrists, a bit of smoky eye, and dirt on my face and torso. A horned demon drags me through a dark cave with a stone altar in the middle. On top of it is a glass coffin with black steel edges along its many facets. The demon pokes me on my side with a spear and forces me to lay inside the coffin, waving his weapon around to encourage the audience to come closer. They gawk at me, their masked faces crowding my vision. One of them, a slight thing wearing a denim jacket and a crop top, points a finger at me, at my belly. I protest and scream. Tears rush down my face, spit obscures the pane of glass. It's my first time in this role, but it comes to me naturally. I'm in the zone, on autopilot, that all I'm thinking is, fuck, I hope my body looks good. Soon, the masks part and the demon returns to loom over me. He opens a panel on the bottom of the coffin lid and ceremoniously dumps a basket full of live, bright-banded snakes on my legs. What this punishment has to do with thieving, I have no fucking clue. I yell like I'm dying, but it's not all acting. Snakes generally don't scare me, and I was fine in rehearsal, but damn if this show isn't immersive, even for the actors. I look down and watch the snakes crawling up my calves and thighs, and I have to tell myself they're not venomous. They only look like coral snakes. I catch a glimpse of my abs. Heaving, sweaty, well-defined. I breathe a quick sigh of relief. Then I scream again, giving it all I've got. Look, I'm not old enough to forget my early years of zero callbacks, of being happy to get the shittiest roles because it meant I'd at least get to eat for that week. I'm grateful to have a job, really, I am. No one wanted me after I up and left my last show without notice, and a death in the family wasn't a good enough reason for a multi-million-dollar production to even consider hiring me back. Everyone is replaceable. They ingrained that in all of us in theater school. Dante's Inferno is still a hot ticket. Tourists and nostalgic locals still pay $2.50 a pop for what's basically a haunted house attraction. But let's face it, it's a nothing role and it's demeaning. It's still a craft, you know, the other shade told me once during rehearsal. I can tell she's got the chops and she's gonna go far, but not before this industry beats that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed disposition out of her. And it's a really good stepping stone, she says. Maybe for you, Miss Fresh out of Interlaken, I thought to myself. But I've already stepped on some stones. I was a principal on fucking Broadway. I'm an understudy for a lead. I could have made my lead debut by now, if only Nathan didn't die, if only I could hold it together. Dedication beats raw talent every time. That's another one of those theater school gems. The other shade was half right, though. This job means I get to do crafts, the one thing I've always loved to do, what I believe in my bones I was born to do, the one thing I'm good at, really good at, to create something out of nothing and with it forge a connection, to make another human being feel something, feel alive. It's the only thing I have now. The next part of my loop is less involved. For one, I don't have to yell as much. Backstage, I slip on the fortune teller's black velvet robe, stoned with a map of the night sky, then put on a full silicone mask that makes it look as though my head has been rotated backwards. I enter with my scene partner, another horned demon, carrying a large wooden cartwheel. He forces my arms through the spokes, then breaks my bones, contorting my limbs into painful-looking angles. I writhe and moan, which is all I can do under the stifling mask. With a pulley, the demon then hangs the wheel and me onto a post and leaves me to die in agony. Through a thin mesh under the fake hair on the back of my head, I watch Virgil orate while Dante gazes up upon me silently, wearing an expression that could either be judgment or sympathy. Behind him, an audience member fidgets with her mask before finally taking it off completely, revealing a reddened face dewy with sweat. She fans herself with the white mask, clearly bored. She's looking around for the path ahead. The man standing next to her gives her a nudge, and she protests. It takes 2 other patrons to shush her before she puts her mask back on. When Virgil finishes his speech, the scene moves on, and so do the patrons. They make their way down to the final circle of hell, walking past me in a file. When the woman, who took off her mask, gets close enough, I pull against my restraints and lean in toward her, close enough to whisper into her ear. I hope you get hit by a bus on your way home tonight, you piece of shit. Something I've recently started doing to break up the monotony. Every night, I pick someone from the crowd, get in their ear, and spew the vilest line that comes to me in that moment. Think of it as improv. Times like tonight, the choice is pretty obvious. Usually it's a matter of opportunity. Whoever I can get close enough to gets it. They don't have to do anything or be anything or look a certain way, since they all look the same with the masks anyway. At first, I only did it on lark, but the more I do it, the more it feels like a compulsion. Like Tourette's, but more creative. I get a satisfying twinge in the back of my neck each time, and it feels even better when I get a horrified gasp out of it, which I almost always do. Once or twice, I've gotten a disappointing giggle, but I'd like to think that moments later, when it's sunk in that none of it was part of the script, and the man behind the shade meant those words specifically for them, they would shiver and clutch their chests, filled with unspeakable dread for the rest of their 9-flight descent into hell. You're a fake ass and you're not fooling anyone. Your mother never loved you. Don't you wish you weren't such a pathetic little bitch? You're a fucking waste of oxygen. I know where you live. After the stage manager confirms the last of the patrons have exited the ninth circle, I make my way backstage through the service hallways. Gaffer tapes line the floor to lead the way, but there are a bunch of turns, and even though there are no branching paths, I lose my bearings. I should be at the west side stairwell by now, but somehow I think I ended up deep in the middle of the building rather than outside on the perimeter where I should be. When I look back and retrace my steps, all there is a long empty corridor and silence. Where is everybody? I keep walking, following the blue gaffer tape, but each second I'm convinced I'm not where I should be. One turn, then another. 3 short hallways that should have brought me back where I began. But I'm on yet another hallway and there's still no exit. Finally, I come down a hall that ends in double doors with crash bars. I go in. I find myself in a large office floor flooded with fluorescent white light. The walls, floors, and ceiling are all white, as are the desks, which are arranged in neat columns that stretched endlessly in all directions. There are no chairs, no objects on top of the desks, or up on the walls. My eyes begin to ache in the cold brightness. Squeaky footsteps come from behind me, but when I whip around, I find no one. Hello? I ask. My voice doesn't echo in the space. My fortune teller's robe shifts around me soundlessly. The squeaking grows louder, closer, but there's nothing around me but empty desks and blinding whiteness. When it reaches my ear, the sound is crisp and even. Hello, Cal. I bolt toward the door and rush down the hall, going back the way I came. I don't know when it happened, but the gaffer tape is now gone. I keep going, trusting my instinct that I'm moving as far away from the white room as possible. Soon, I come upon the end of a long hallway that ends in another set of double doors. This one has a red fire exit sign above it. Trembling, I push through and find myself on the sidewalk behind the building, standing amid the street lamps and the cacophony of 10th Avenue at night. Thank you.
That was fantastic. So we can see that in summer of next year?
No, 2028.
Oh, 28. Oh, okay. I thought you said 27. Oh, all right. So.
Did I say 27? I meant 28.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we'll have to wait, but Victor does have other books. And Sam loved it. I thought the reading was fantastic. You said that chapbook sold out, unfortunately?
My copies are sold out. The website might still have more.
Okay.
Or you can shoot them a message. Be like, print more.
Yeah, make more. I really loved the readings tonight. Thank you both for reading for us. Thank you all for coming. And please stick around, have some drinks, and we'll see you all next month.
You have been listening to the Fantastic Fiction at KGB reading series. Check out our website at kgbfantasticfiction.org and click on support if you'd like to help keep the series going. Anyway, that's our show. Thanks for listening and see you next month.